The frosty December air carried the cheerful sounds of carolers and distant laughter at Jasmine's boarding school. But none of it reached her. She sat by the window in her dormitory, knees drawn to her chest, her breath fogging the glass as she stared out at the falling snow. Inside, the halls buzzed with students eager to return home for the holidays. Some packed their bags, while others shared stories about their families and plans for Christmas Day. Jasmine remained silent, her resentment as thick as the winter chill. At 14, Jasmine's beauty was striking. Her skin glowed with warmth even in the dim light. Her thick curls framed her face perfectly, and her wide, expressive eyes carried the fire of her emotions. But now, those eyes held nothing but bitterness, especially when she thought of her mother, Vivian. Vivian had sent Jasmine to boarding school months earlier, citing her busy work schedule as the reason. To Jasmine, it was another excuse, another way for her mother to push her away. Her father, James, had warned her about Vivian long ago. "Your mother only cares about her career, Jasmine. She doesn't know how to love anyone, not even her family." Jasmine believed every word. And now, as Christmas approached, her hatred for Vivian burned brighter than ever. Far away in Abuja, Vivian sat alone in her spacious, beautifully decorated living room. The house was a picture-perfect holiday haven. Garlands draped over the banister, fairy lights twinkling on the Christmas tree, and the warm glow of a crackling fireplace filling the room. Yet the beauty of her surroundings only made Vivian feel more alone. She clutched an old photo of her family, a younger version of herself, James and baby Jasmine, smiling and full of hope. The image mocked her now. Those smiles, that joy, all felt like a distant memory. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered to the empty room. "Does she even know how much I miss her?" Vivian had built a successful career as a doctor, but the sacrifices that came with it had cost her dearly. The growing chasm between her and her daughter haunted her every waking moment. The silence from Jasmine was louder than any words. It hadn't always been like this. Years earlier, Vivian had been a bright-eyed medical student full of ambition and dreams. She had always envisioned herself as someone who could make a difference, someone who would save lives. It was during her time in Lagos, while attending a friend's wedding, that she met James. He was an architect, charming and full of vision, with a contagious laugh and a magnetic energy that seemed to light up every room he entered. Vivian was captivated. James pursued her relentlessly, showering her with attention and affection. Their love story was swift and romantic, and within 2 years they were married in a ceremony that left everyone talking. They were the golden couple, celebrated for their passion and drive. Together, they dreamed of building a life that would be the envy of everyone they knew, a life filled with success, love, and children. The early years of their marriage were filled with promise. They spent weekends planning their future, designing their dream home, and imagining the laughter of children filling the halls. But as the months turned into years and their attempts to have children failed, cracks began to appear in their perfect union. James, once a pillar of support, became irritable and withdrawn. His confidence faltered, and bitterness began to take its place. "Why us?" he'd ask, pacing the room. Vivian, ever the optimist, threw herself into her work, determined to distract herself from the growing tension. But deep down, she worried they were losing the love that had once felt unbreakable. After 5 long years of trying, a miracle came. Vivian was pregnant. The news filled their home with a joy they hadn't felt in years, and when they learned it was twins, their happiness doubled. James seemed to come alive again, doting on Vivian and eagerly preparing for the arrival of their children. For a brief moment, it felt like their marriage was healing. But the pregnancy wasn't easy. Vivian's body struggled to cope with carrying twins, and her demanding job only made things harder. Her days were long and exhausting, her nights restless and filled with worry. She often asked James to take on more responsibilities around the house, but his pride kept him from doing anything he considered beneath him. "Can't you see I'm trying?" he snapped one evening when she asked him to pick up groceries. His temper had become a constant presence, a sharp contrast to the loving man she had married. At 32 weeks, while on a particularly grueling shift at the hospital, Vivian went into premature labor. The delivery was harrowing, and though Jasmine was born healthy, her twin brother didn't survive. The loss was a devastating blow. Vivian was heartbroken, her grief a heavy weight she carried in silence. James, however, seemed detached. He barely acknowledged their loss, instead focusing on Jasmine, who quickly became the center of his world. While Vivian buried herself in work to keep their family afloat, James showered Jasmine with attention, creating a bond that excluded Vivian almost entirely. As the years passed, Vivian became the sole breadwinner of the family. James struggled to hold down a job, his arrogance and unreliability leading to dismissal after dismissal. Whenever Vivian managed to secure him a position through her connections, he found a way to lose it. Vivian's days were grueling. She spent long hours at the hospital, often taking on extra shifts to cover their expenses. When she returned home, she was met with chaos, unwashed dishes, a messy house, and a husband who seemed more interested in lounging than contributing. "James, I can't do this alone," she said one evening, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "You're always complaining," he retorted, barely looking up from the television. "I'm here every day with Jasmine while you're off at work. Maybe you should try being a real mother." The words stung. Vivian wanted nothing more than to spend time with her daughter, but the demands of her job and James's refusal to step up left her no choice. Jasmine, meanwhile, was growing up with a deep admiration for her father. He was the fun parent, the one who played games and told jokes, while Vivian was the disciplinarian, always tired and stressed. "She doesn't care about us," James often whispered to Jasmine. "All she cares about is her job." Jasmine believed him. One day, Vivian received a career-changing offer, a senior position at her hospital's headquarters in Abuja. The promotion came with a furnished house, a company car, and a significant salary increase. It was the kind of opportunity she had worked her entire life for. Vivian rushed home to share the news, her excitement bubbling over. "This could change everything," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "We could move to Abuja, start fresh, and give Jasmine the life she deserves." But James's reaction was cold. "I'm not moving," he said flatly. "I'm settled here." His refusal wasn't rooted in practicality. It was pure stubbornness. Jasmine, influenced by her father, sided with him. "You only think about yourself," Jasmine said, her voice laced with contempt. "Why do you always put your job first?" Vivian was crushed. She tried to explain that the move was for their benefit, but her words fell on deaf ears. In the end, she turned down the promotion, sacrificing her dream for the sake of her family. Despite her sacrifices, Vivian's marriage crumbled further. She discovered James was having an affair with a woman named Emily. Worse, he was using Vivian's hard-earned money to support Emily and her children. When she confronted him, James was unapologetic. "You drove me to this," he said coldly. "You were never here." Vivian filed for divorce, but the fallout was devastating. Jasmine blamed her entirely, refusing to speak to her for weeks. "You ruined our family," Jasmine shouted one evening before storming off. Vivian's heart broke, but she knew there was no going back. After the divorce, Vivian relocated to Abuja. finally accepting the promotion she had once turned down. The move was supposed to be a new beginning, a way to heal from the heartbreak and build a better future for her daughter. Yet, the emptiness of her sprawling new home made her loneliness all the more unbearable. The house was pristine and elegant, complete with high ceilings, polished floors, and wide windows that overlooked the vibrant cityscape, but it felt cold, lifeless, like a hollow monument to everything she had sacrificed. Vivian's days were filled with the demands of her new role at the hospital, but her nights stretched long and silent, filled only with memories of what she had lost. Jasmine's resentment had only deepened with the move. Vivian had enrolled her in one of the best boarding schools in the country, believing it would give her stability and access to the best education, but Jasmine saw it as yet another way her mother was pushing her away. "First, you ruined everything with Dad," Jasmine had said bitterly on their last call. "And now you've dumped me here so you can focus on your precious job." Vivian had tried to respond, her voice breaking under the weight of her guilt. "Jasmine, I'm doing this for you, for us. I just want you to have the best life possible." But Jasmine had hung up, leaving Vivian clutching the phone in despair. At night, Vivian sat alone in her large living room, surrounded by the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree she had decorated herself. She stared at old family photos, her tears falling silently as she wondered if she had made the right choices. As Christmas approached, Jasmine couldn't stand the thought of spending the holidays at her boarding school, isolated from the life she had once known. She had always associated Christmas with family traditions, the smell of fresh baked cookies, the warmth of her father's jokes, the twinkling lights they'd hang together. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory. Late one night, Jasmine made up her mind. She packed a small bag with her essentials, slipped out of the dormitory, and boarded the first bus heading to Lagos. She was determined to reunite with her father, the one person she believed truly cared about her. When Jasmine arrived at James's doorstep, she was greeted with surprise. "Jasmine," he said, his eyes widening as he opened the door. "What are you doing here?" Jasmine threw her arms around him, her voice trembling. "I couldn't stay there, Dad. I needed to be with you." James hesitated for a moment before pulling her inside. For the first few days, Jasmine felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in months. James was attentive and doting, filling the house with laughter and lightheartedness. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Jasmine began to notice things about her father she hadn't seen before. James often left her alone in the evenings, saying he had business to attend to. His relationship with Emily, the woman he had chosen over Vivian, seemed strained. Their arguments were frequent and loud, usually about money. One night, as Jasmine lay awake in the guest room, she overheard a particularly heated argument. "You're so lazy, James," Emily shouted. "Vivian did everything for you, and now you expect me to do the same? I'm not going to pick up the pieces like she did." "Don't bring Vivian into this," James retorted, his voice sharp. "She was no saint." "Oh, please," Emily shot back. "She worked herself to the bone while you sat around feeling sorry for yourself. You're the reason she left." The words hit Jasmine like a thunderclap. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding as the truth began to sink in. The following morning, Jasmine couldn't shake the memory of Emily's words. She thought back to all the times her mother had come home late, exhausted from work, and the way her father would dismiss her efforts. She thought of the arguments, the tension, and the sacrifices Vivian had made to keep their family afloat. For the first time, she began to question everything her father had told her. Was her mother really as cold and selfish as she'd believed? Or had she been blinded by her father's charm and manipulations? That evening, Jasmine picked up her phone and dialed her mother's number. Her hands trembled as she listened to the ringing on the other end. When Vivian answered, her voice was hesitant. "Jasmine." "Mom," Jasmine said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand." Vivian's breath caught. "Jasmine, what's wrong? Where are you?" "I'm with Dad," Jasmine confessed, tears streaming down her face. "But I need you. Please, can you come get me?" Vivian didn't hesitate. "I'll be there tomorrow morning," she promised. On Christmas morning, Vivian arrived at James's house. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the door, unsure of what kind of reception awaited her. When the door opened, Jasmine stood there, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Without a word, Jasmine threw herself into her mother's arms. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she sobbed. "I've been so horrible to you. I didn't know what you were going through." Vivian held her daughter tightly, her own tears flowing freely. "It's okay, my love. I'm just so happy to have you back." James stood awkwardly in the background, his expression unreadable. For once, he didn't have anything to say. Back in Abuja, Vivian and Jasmine began the process of rebuilding their relationship. Vivian took time off from work to focus on her daughter, and Jasmine, now understanding the depth of her mother's sacrifices, began to open up. They spent the days leading up to New Year's decorating their home, baking cookies, and reminiscing about happier times. For the first time in years, their home felt warm and full of love. On New Year's Eve, they exchanged gifts. Vivian gave Jasmine a scrapbook filled with photos and memories from her childhood, while Jasmine presented her mother with a handwritten letter expressing her love and gratitude. As they sat by the fireplace, watching the clock tick toward midnight, Vivian placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "No matter what happens, Jasmine, I'll always fight for you. Always." Jasmine leaned into her mother's embrace. "And I'll never stop trying to make it up to you." The story ended not with a perfect resolution, but with a promise of healing, love, and understanding. Christmas isn't just about lights and presents, it's about forgiveness, family, and the power of unconditional love. If this story touched your heart, let it be a reminder that every family has its challenges, but no bond is beyond repair. Let's spread this message of love, forgiveness, and healing together. Subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt stories like this. Stories that inspire, move, and remind us of what truly matters. Join our growing community, and let's continue sharing the power of storytelling. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with someone who needs it today.